In my family, image was everything. If you couldn't post it on Instagram, it didn't happen. My older brother, Brad, he was the golden boy, a high-flying real estate agent. Luxury suits, leased BMWs, teeth whitened to a blinding shade of porcelain. My parents treated him like he was the second coming of Steve Jobs. And then there was me, Lucas, the tech guy. To them, I was just the disappointment who sat in his room all day, staring at screens, typing code in the dark. My dad used to introduce us at parties like this. This is Brad. He's closing $1 million deal downtown. And this is Lucas. He fixes computers. I didn't fix computers. I was a lead back-end engineer for a logistics startup that was quietly revolutionizing the shipping industry. But I never corrected them. I learned a long time ago that they didn't care about what I did, only how it looked. I lived simply. I drove a Honda Civic. I wore hoodies. I saved roughly 80% of my paycheck. I was building a war chest, waiting for the day I could buy my own place and finally move out of the toxicity. But my parents, they mistook my frugality for failure. The explosion happened on a Tuesday. I came home from a late shift to find my mom and Brad sitting at the kitchen table. Brad had his head in his hands. Mom looked defiant. "Lucas," she said, not even looking up, "we need to talk about that joint savings account." I froze. When I was 16, my parents opened a joint account with me. I had largely forgotten they had access to it, but I used it to stash my emergency fund. $45,000. "What about it?" I asked, my stomach dropping. "Brad is in a bit of a bind." My dad walked in, wiping his hands on a towel. "The market is soft. He needs a bridge loan to cover his lifestyle until his next big closing." We transferred the money. I checked my phone. The balance was zero. You stole 45 grand? I whispered. "That was my down payment. That was 3 years of savings." Brad finally looked up, eyes red, but still arrogant. "It's not stealing, Luke. It's an investment in the family brand. I'll pay you back when I sell the Lakeview property. You don't need it anyway. You just sit in your room playing video games." My dad scoffed. "Exactly. Brad has a reputation to maintain. Well, you don't have expenses. You should be happy to help your brother succeed." They didn't ask. They took. And they justified it by telling themselves I was worthless. I didn't yell. That's the thing about true rage. It's quiet. "Okay," I said, "if that's how it is." I packed a bag that night, I moved into a cheap motel, and the next morning, I changed every password, closed every shared loop, and went absolute, total, no contact. 2 years. For 2 years, they didn't hear a peep. In that time, my little computer job exploded. Our startup was acquired by a major tech giant. My equity shares vested instantly. Overnight, I went from comfortable to never have to work again. I bought a penthouse downtown. I traveled to Tokyo, London, Berlin. I started my own venture capital firm. Meanwhile, I kept tabs on Brad. The Lakeview property he was supposed to sell, it sat on the market for 18 months. He eventually sold it at a loss. He never paid me back a dime. In fact, I heard from a cousin that Brad told everyone I had abandoned the family during a crisis. Typical. Then, I saw the listing. Brad had somehow landed a whale, a $10 million modern estate in the hills. It was a pocket listing, meaning it wasn't public yet. This was his last shot. If he didn't sell this, his agency was going to drop him. He was leveraged to the hilt, drowning in debt, and this commission was his only lifeline. He was hosting an exclusive invite-only open house for high net worth investors. I called my lawyer. "Get me an LLC," I said, "and get me an invite." I pulled up to the estate in a matte black McLaren. The valet's eyes popped out of his head. I stepped out, wearing a tailored Italian suit that cost more than Brad's car, sunglasses on. I walked up the driveway. Brad was at the door, holding a glass of champagne, laughing with some older couple. He looked tired, desperate, but he was putting on the show. When he saw me, he stopped mid-laugh. He actually dropped his glass. Smash. "Lucas?" he choked out. My parents were behind him. My mom gasped. My dad just stared, his mouth hanging open like a broken hinge. "Hey, Brad," I said, taking off my sunglasses. "Nice place." What are you doing here?" my dad stammered. "Security. This is a private event." "I know," I said, pulling a sleek black invitation from my pocket. "My assistant RSVP'd for me, under Vanguard Holdings." Brad's face went pale. You You are Vanguard Holdings? I am, I smiled. And I'm looking for a new headquarters. This place has good bones. I walked past them. I didn't wait for permission. I walked through the living room, tapped the marble countertops, critiqued the view. They followed me like puppy dogs, terrified and confused. I stopped in the master bedroom, looking out at the city lights. It'll work, I said, turning to Brad. I'll take it. Full ask. Cash offer. 10 million. Brad's eyes lit up. I could see the greed overriding the shock. He did the math in his head. A $300,000 commission. It would save him. Really? Brad stammered, putting on his salesman smile. That's amazing, Luke. I knew you'd come around. We're family, right? This is great. My mom stepped forward, tears in her eyes, fake tears. Oh, Lucas, I knew you were doing well. We missed you so much. I held up a hand. There's just one condition, I said softly. Anything, Brad said. Name it. I want the house, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. But I don't want the agent. The room went dead silent. Excuse me? Brad asked. I'm buying the house directly from the seller, I explained. I've already spoken to the owner. He knows I'm a cash buyer. He's agreed to cut out the listing agent to save on fees. I stepped closer to Brad. That means 0 commission for you. You're fired from the listing, Brad. You can't do that, my dad shouted. That's your brother's money. No, I corrected him. That $45,000 you stole from me? That was my brother's money. This? I gestured to the mansion. This is just business. I looked Brad dead in the eye. You took my safety net to build your fake empire. So now I'm buying your empire. And you aren't seeing a penny of it. I turned to leave. Oh, I paused at the door. Mom, Dad, don't worry about Brad. I'm sure he can find a job fixing computers or something. I hear it pays pretty well. I walked out to my McLaren, engine roaring to life, leaving them standing in the driveway of a house they couldn't afford, arguing over a check that would never come. They wanted me to be a failure so badly. They never saw me coming.